Coming up on today's show, Bethany Snyder and Kris Maul are a queer couple living in Urbandale, Iowa, with their amazing 14-year-old kiddo and adorable pets. Bethany grew up in Altoona, while Kris was born in Illinois and later moved to the Madison, Wisconsin area. They have lived all over the country, from Washington, D.C. to Northern California, before moving to Iowa in 2019. I'm excited to share their success story of coming through our Loving Without Boundaries immersive coaching program and process. Welcome to Loving Without Boundaries, where we hear inspiring stories, share actionable advice, and talk about the challenges and the joys of ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. I'm your host, Kitty Shambliss. Coming up, my conversation with Bethany Snyder and Kris Maul. I am super excited to be here for what I know is going to be an amazing interview with two of our rock star clients who have an amazing, transformational, inspiring story to share. And I want to thank both Bethany and Kris for being here and offering us your valuable time to have this conversation to help other people realize that, you know, if you all can go on this amazing journey and find the success that we're going to talk about, so can other people as well. So thank you so much for being here, first off.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'd love it if first you just, in your own words, whatever feels comfortable to you, just introduce yourselves to our Loving Without Boundaries community and anybody that is watching this either live or the recording later.
Hi, my name's Kris. So a little bit about me. I am a transgender man. I'm queer identified for my sexuality. Been monogamous my whole life up until about a year ago.
Yeah, so I'm Bethany, and I am a cisgender queer woman. And Kris and I have been married for, I think this year, was it 18 years? This coming up in October. And so we've been together, it'll be like 20 years then. And have mainly been monogamous my whole life as well, up until about a year ago. And so we're excited to share our story. We live in the Midwest as well. So those are some of our various identifiers. Mm-hmm. And we have a kiddo.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure a lot of folks here can either relate to what you shared so far and what are about to share too. And thank you for your vulnerability and just telling your beautiful story here with all of us. So my first question I'd like to start out with would be, where do you think you both were? How would you describe it? Like right before you initially reached out to me, what was going on in your relationship, in your lives, and what were some of the challenges that you were struggling with?
Yeah, so I would say for me, I was like on central nervous system high alert, say kind of crisis mode, in and out of it, because we had opened up our marriage for the first time about 3 months prior to reaching out to you, and had just a lot of hiccups. So we had done some research on our own, like, reading things, listening to podcasts, all of that before we really opened up. But honestly, we just weren't prepared. So I found you, Kitty, just through some Google searching, found your podcast and then your website, and that you had this coaching program. And again, like, was feeling very much like I was drowning and I needed a lifeline. So that's what prompted us to reach out. You want to add where you were at, Bethany?
Yeah, I kind of joke that we're on the Hot Mess Express and I was the conductor. But yeah, we had a really solid relationship, a really solid marriage. I'd say we had like hashtag relationship goals with our friend circle. And so while we did like some cursory research, I definitely feel I was naive and had some naivete about how much this would really change the dynamic between us, or how much support we would really need. Mm-hmm. And so that's what led us to Kitty. Yeah, I think while we thought we had a really strong, I think we do have a strong relationship. Again, we just weren't ready for some of the pitfalls or some of the emotions or some of the things. Again, we were just a little naive to the whole process. And so that's why we reached out to you.
Mm-hmm. And refresh my memory, how long were you together and married at that point, roughly, when you first reached out?
That would have been like together 19 years, married 15,
16.
16. So bad. We
Sorry, that's so bad we lost
we lost count. Yeah.
we lost count.
Yeah. But yeah, so we, like I said, had been monogamous our whole relationship.
Wow. Yeah. And in case it helps anybody to relate to your story, may I ask how old your kiddo is?
Yeah, so we have a 14-year-old.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot going on there too. So, and in terms of what you were struggling with, so I'm hearing the nervous system for you, Kris, just feeling on high alert, maybe big emotions. What else was it maybe affecting, like how you were communicating or anything else you'd like to describe about more specifically what you were struggling with?
For sure. So for me, I think definitely the communication. I was not, while I thought I was being a good communicator and sharing what I thought I should be sharing, I definitely wasn't. And I wasn't communicating, like I would say, at the right times, in the right moment, with the right information. And so that continued to cause Kris more hurt. And then that continued to cause me more shame. And so then it hindered my ability to be open and honest and communicative, because I felt so much shame about what I was feeling and thinking and doing. And the harm I felt that I was causing Kris, that it kind of like spiraled down that way. So that was what was happening on my side.
Yeah. And I think for me, a big piece of it was just like not really understanding my emotions and feelings I was having. So like kind of, just staying very surface level with myself, but not looking at like what was underneath that and what was really going on. And honestly too, just, the whole opening up experience kind of just, raised some of my wounds from childhood and, highlighted some of those parts of myself that I honestly thought that I had kind of healed over time, but like creating this new dynamic in our relationship and opening up to have experiences with other people kind of stirred up a lot of that for me around, my identity, who I am as a trans person and a man, and just kind of some of the affirmation around that I was taking for granted in our monogamous relationship and probably really hadn't truly worked through that I needed to.
Yeah. Thanks to both of you for just your vulnerability. And I love, of course, the self-awareness that you have now, because I'm sure back then you were just really confused. And I know, Bethany, you often just said, we're just a hot mess, and just, like also like, we don't even know what's going on. How do we solve this? So I really appreciate both of your vulnerability there. And again, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, myself included, in terms of learning to release shame around practicing consensual non-monogamy, and also thinking that we've healed all those wounds from our childhood, yet they still keep coming up, so that work is really powerful. I'm curious, what were some of the things that you tried to navigate through this prior to reaching out to me? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, we both are kind of like, if there's a issue or a problem we're trying to solve, like, let's learn as much as we can. So we really dug deep into everything we could get our hands on as far as, podcasts that are out there about consensual non-monogamy, reading books, reading blogs online, things like that. So we had tried to do our own research and dig in that way. And then we also were both in individual therapy and seeing a couples therapist at that point before we got signed up with your coaching program. And, therapy wasn't new to us. We've done it as a couple in the past, and we've also both individually done it. So it's something we were familiar with, but I think we just realized like, this isn't going to get us the results we're looking for as quickly as we need them. Cause like I said, I felt like I was drowning. Like I just needed a lifeline. I needed somebody to help me figure out how to like get my central nervous system back under control and to really figure out what was going on.
And I feel like we really needed concrete tools. Like I think therapy is good for maybe, we're huge fans of the mental health, community, obviously. But I think it's a little bit more self-reflective and long-term. And I really needed like concrete tools. Like what are things that we need to be assessing? What are things we need to be looking at? Where is this coming from? And we had some really dark moments. And Chris and and another thing I realized is we had such a solid relationship. We had actually never dealt with anything big between the two of us. Of course, we've dealt with big life things together, with families and friends and jobs, but we've never had consternation between the two of us. And that was so new. We'd always been able to approach challenges together, but when the challenges are between us, we didn't know how to do that. Because I guess it's the curse of having a great relationship. I don't know. Like we just never had to do that. We were always so solid. And so I think that was something we were struggling is how we've never had the consternation between the two of us. How do we work through that? And how can we approach that as a team like we always have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate what you said there. And also both of your awareness to realize that you tried, you reached out and were looking at books and podcasts and this, that, and the other thing, but it wasn't really moving the needle the way that you wanted. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that there's some terms like in terms of unconscious incompetence, like when you don't know what you don't know and you don't even know it at all. But I love what you're really saying is like there was that conscious incompetence. Like we realize we need some tools. We know or we need to reach out somewhere. And so I appreciate your courage in doing the research and Chris, you initially finding my work and reaching out. And certainly you two are definitely growth mindset type of people. But I'd love to ask the question, was there even a part of you that was either skeptical or unsure how going through this process here with my coaching program and that kind of immersive process, like if that was actually going to work, did that ever come up, any skepticism?
Well, I think for us, think it's less about skepticism. So we have done with our parenting journey, we had used a coach and had really good success with it.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so we had already had that really good, success story with coaching. So I think we were really, really open to it, but I think so I wasn't as much suspicious or skeptical as much as I am about anything. I think for us, there were times when I was like, again, we had never ever, and I'm gonna be really honest, like we never talked about breaking up. And sometimes we talked about that. And that was really, really scary. That was actually one of the most scary things for me. It was very destabilizing. And so I think what was helpful for us is just that we had somewhere to turn when we were having those really challenging moments. And we had a community that had also faced those challenges. I think it's like being a queer person. And I think that's also something as queer people we've learned is like, we have to find our community. It's not going to be out there in the wild. We have to build it intentionally. And that's the same with this community. You have to find your people that you can talk to and that will relate to you and that can help you through those tough times. I think it's very similar to that. We found that with this, with our parenting coaching group as well. They had children with similar challenges as ours. And you're just not going to find that in your neighborhood unless you're really lucky. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a little bit more about why maybe we are a little bit more open to it just because we've had these other experiences. Mm-hmm.
I will just add, I think when we first initially got started in the program, I did have a little skepticism, even though we had that very successful experience through the parenting coaching program. But, I was in that crisis mode and I was like, okay, something's wrong between us. Like we need to fix this thing between us when really, it's about what's going on in me. Right. Yeah. And so I did have a little bit of that skepticism, like, okay, is doing this work on my mindfulness, figuring out what I'm actually feeling in those moments and what those feelings are trying to tell me. And, relating that back to maybe wounds from childhood, whatever it is doing all that actually going to fix what's going on between us? Spoiler alert, it has helped tremendously. So, but that if there was any skepticism for me, that was kind of the piece of it. Is do I really need to do all this work on me? Isn't there something we need to be working on, between the two of us? So
yeah, I mean, it's so similar to our parenting journey because that's the thing. I think between us, we're well, if Chris would just do this thing, we'd be better. Or he's probably thinking if Bethany would just stop doing all this crazy stuff, then you would be fine. It's kind of like we looked at our kid and it was like, if our kid would just stop doing these behaviors, no, it was about us as parents and how we model them for them and our mindset. Like very similar. It's like, it's all the stuff that has to happen in here and then it's reflected outside of you.
I love that. Yeah. I really appreciate what you both shared there, starting with you, Kris. Just a lot of times people do come to do this work here with me because of a particular relationship, but they find that first, the most important relationship is the one that we have with ourselves. And once we get more grounded with that and get some clarity and aha moments with what we need to work on internally, then that also benefits our relationships. And also the coaching process that I built it starts from the inside out, and then we give you the different communication tools as you go. And I also loved what you shared, Bethany. I started this whole community. It was back in December of 2012 when I was feeling very alone and I didn't have community. And I just thought, wait a minute, why don't I just create one? But it's so magical to think that decision I made all the way back then led to us talking today, that whole journey that I went on so that I could build this community, put the kind of lighthouse spotlight out there to find folks like yourselves that are needing help. So thank you for sharing that. It was really beautiful. So I'd love to ask to help inspire folks too, like what would you say are some of the amazing or immediate results that you started to achieve, even if it was in the first few weeks or maybe in slightly beyond that? Whoever wants to share first.
Well, I think I also, because we are a queer couple, I do want to pull out some of these pieces about how I think as a queer couple, we're also more primed maybe for learning, for recognizing, we've had to recognize heteronormativity, for example, and how it's ingrained in us from a little kid, right? It's ingrained that you're gonna, when you're a little girl, oh, do you have a little boyfriend when you're in preschool, right? And then who you're gonna go to the dances with and who you're gonna go, that's all ingrained. So we have heteronormativity is all around us all the time. And so when you become a queer person, you have to unlearn that because it's just not, it's not gonna suit you. It's not gonna work. It doesn't fit on you. It doesn't fit you right. And so I think that's kind of the mindset also. I don't know if we brought that to the coaching program, but I think I feel like I had an aha moment. I think we've had those aha moments, and the same with monogamy. We have been ingrained and have all these things around us from a lifetime. And so having to unlearn that. So I think that was one of the aha moments and how I was able to relate that back to our queerness and our identity and how we've already had to unlearn a lot of things. We've already had to buck the system of every day. When we walk outside this house, we have to buck the system and put on armor and be who we are. So just approaching that, I think taking that on was helpful for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, some of the most immediate wins definitely came in week 1 and 2. So just, those first couple of weeks modules and any kind of coaching program or experience, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So I was making a very conscious effort at that time to invest a lot of time in, going through the materials and the modules, watching the videos, participating on the calls with the group. And I just immediately kind of could sense, that nervous system getting back more towards normal, not feeling on high alert the whole time. And definitely by week 2 and 3, I wasn't drowning anymore. I was okay, I see a future, how this can work. And, I just need to put in some work now to get to that place.
Wow, that's really amazing that, you have this beautiful marriage, everything's going swimmingly. Then you open up and it's 3 months of, oh my God, this is a hot mess. Right? Start grasping at different things. And that's so amazing for me to hear. And I'm sure our listeners is super inspiring who may not know that this type of coaching is out there, that particularly for you, Kris, those shifts you saw just in the first 3 weeks, that's remarkable. And it also, as you said, it really underscores how much work you both were putting in, your resilience. So I want to honor you both because I'm giving you the pathway, I'm giving you the journey, but you're the one that has to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So just really appreciate you both giving it your all so that you could get those amazing results. And since you mentioned your nervous system, Kris, is there Is there any particular thing that stood out to you in terms of helping your nervous system to calm down? Like, was some of it just feeling in a safe environment and feeling seen? And like you said, seeing how, okay, if these folks are figuring it out, I guess I can too. Was it that, or was there maybe some different skills that you learned right away that you felt were helpful with kind of calming that down?
Yeah, I think it really was a combination of all those things, Kitty. So definitely being part of a community of others who, are going through similar things, and seeing the different growth and progress that they had made, and also seeing, the things that they were still being challenged by. Honestly, like all of that just kind of normalized, like, okay, there's other humans that are having a similar experience. They're kind of able to shift that in positive ways. And so I could see that ahead for myself as well. And then I do remember in those first few weeks, some of the specific tools that we get through the modules. And like for me, it was kind of a reminder of things that I had done at prior points in my life that worked really well, right? Like getting back to a routine. What am I going to do every day, even if it's in the shower for a minute, like for, mindfulness. So am I going to, I can focus on the shower, on the warm water on my head for those 20 seconds. That's some mindfulness, and just trying to consistently build in a routine. And as we progress throughout the weeks, adding new things, new ideas and skills that I hadn't thought of before, hadn't tried before, was really a benefit too.
Also, and we have reminded that's for our parenting journey, like looking for the wins, looking for where you're growing. You can always look to see where, oh, I'm not progressing this much, or I wish I was doing this. But you can say, like, look where we've come from, look where we're going. I think focusing on those wins. For me, I don't know. I don't feel like it's like I soak in the information. I don't immediately feel it until later. And so now over the last few months or after the modules, now I can see, I think about, are we on the are we on the field of battle? I'll say things like that. Or like, what is this serving? Is this serving me well right now? Like those little things, reminders in my head, and thinking back to some of those lessons that we learn. Yeah.
So awesome. And I love just illustrating that conditioning, that consistency. Like it's not just while you're in the core program, it's then applying it. Just like when we go to the gym, you've got to keep going to the gym in order to get the results. So really honor you both. And I'm curious, you mentioned the group Q&A calls. Some folks, you've touched on it, but some folks don't really understand how the combination of both one-on-one calls, like when we might be going over a communication tool together, like we actually just did recently, plus the group Q&A calls, how that all kind of works together to accelerate your results, and maybe how that's different than traditional talk therapy. Does anything come to mind that you think might be helpful for anybody listening?
Yeah, I mean, I know sometimes it might feel like a little too vulnerable to share